Thank you so much for coming to today's Data at Your Desk workshop, Data Analysis with Microsoft Excel. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. We are recording this session. We will send a copy of that out to everyone after the workshop. If you have questions for today's session, please feel free to drop those in the chat as we go along. We'll keep an eye on that and answer those as we have time. So my name is Dr. Nick Roosh. I am the Research Data Management Librarian here at FSU Libraries. So I work with faculty and students across campus to develop strategies to best manage and work with their data. All right. And so I'll have my camera off once we get into the kind of the demonstration part of this, just because there's a lot of screens here. I'll keep it on here at the beginning. So a brief outline about today's workshop. We're going to start with a brief introduction to Excel and the Excel interface, just for those who may not be as familiar with Excel. Then we'll get into preparing your data for analysis. We'll have an example data set that we use to sort of demonstrate some of these strategies. Talk a little bit about formulas and functions and their role when you're looking at your data. We'll then talk about a specific resource that's available within Excel for working with data called the Data Analysis Toolpak. And then we'll finish up with plotting your data, kind of a brief overview of how to develop charts and plots within Excel. So today's workshop is really meant to sort of provide a foundation for working with your data in Excel, with more resources provided at the end if you would like to go further after today's session. So what is Microsoft Excel? It's likely familiar to a lot of folks, but just as background, Excel is a spreadsheet software that was developed by Microsoft many, many years ago. First developed in 1982 as a spreadsheet program called Multiplan. Subsequent versions have added more features that we see today, such as toolbars, 3D charts, etc., etc. It is widely considered an industry standard for spreadsheet software and is used throughout private companies and academia alike, and currently features a wide variety of different graphing and calculation features, some of which we will get into today. So with Microsoft Excel, you can do many things with your data. You can use Excel for data entry, whether that's data you have collected through, say, a survey or in the lab or in the field. You can enter that directly in or import that into Excel. You can then store, organize, and analyze the data using a variety of formulas, functions, and statistical tools. You can also take any inputted data and represent it using an ever-growing suite of graphs. And there are many, many different formulas and functions. There's currently hundreds of them. We have time to go through every single one. And there's also a lot of add-ons and statistical tools that continue to be added with each subsequent version. So if you are looking to use Excel here at FSU, there are a few different options to access the software. You can download Excel as part of FSU's Microsoft Office 365 package that comes with many other Office tools. You can access this if you are in the libraries at Strozier, Dirac, and Engineering. And if you use this online, you can use this for free at the FSU Virtual Lab, my FSU VLab. So there's several different options if you're affiliated with FSU and are looking to use Excel. All right, so now we'll just go over some of the basics of the interface along with some quick definitions so that we are all on the same page. Whenever you open a new Excel file, you'll often hear it referred to as a workbook. And a workbook is a file that contains one or more worksheets, which is where you will be working with your data and organizing the data. These worksheets are denoted by tabs at the bottom left of the page. And you can rename these tabs to something that suits your project or the data that you are working on. Values in Excel are organized by cells, columns, and rows. A column is a vertical set of values, and these columns are represented by letters across the top of the sheet. And then your rows are a horizontal set of values, and these are represented by numbers. And then a cell is the intersection between a column and a row, or sort of the address, if you will. Each cell is named for the column letter and row number that intersect to make it. And then one really interesting part of the Excel interface that I'll talk about again briefly when we actually get into looking at the software is something called the Quick Access Toolbar. So the menu system at the top is known as the ribbon. And this menu consists of a series of tabs, such as your file, home, insert, data, etc., etc. And under each tab, there are a number of buttons that allow you to perform various tasks or edit the spreadsheet in some way. The quick access toolbar is that section that's located at the very top left of your screen. And by default, you often have just like the save, the redo, the undo. So it's these buttons up here that you can access with just one click. This toolbar is designed to be modified and allows you to add any buttons that you are using in Excel that are frequently used. All right, and so for this, I'm now going to go into Excel real quick, and I'm going to show what this looks like. All right, so I'm going to click a new sheet. I'll actually share a link to download this data set here in a second. But if you are looking at the Excel, this is your interface. And keep in mind, I am on a Mac, so things might be slightly different than if you are on Windows. But the quick access toolbar, as I mentioned earlier, is up here at the top. And if you are looking to add any buttons to this, you can click this little 3 dots here that comes up, Customize Quick Access Toolbar. It has a few general commands that are already here. But if you want to select any of the different commands or buttons that are here within Excel, you can click More Commands. And then hopefully you can see this box. This came up, Ribbon and Toolbar. And now you see more commands. You can select from different tabs as well. So if you say want to find something from the Insert tab, for instance, or the Data tab, you can select those specific tabs. And let's say, just for demonstration purposes, we are looking for scatter. So let's say that we often work with scatter plots and we want to add that to our toolbar so it's quick and accessible. If we click this and then click this arrow here that's pointing towards the right-hand side, this XY scatter will show up, and you can reorder these if you like. The order doesn't particularly matter. And then we hit save. And now if you look at the top of your Excel, you can see that this scatter plot is up here at the top. All right. This out of the way. All right. So if we are, just a second. Trying to get out of this little box here. So what I'm going to do for the second, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and reset. All right, so thanks for your patience. The little closeout box was not appearing. All right, so if we are wanting to manually enter data into our Excel spreadsheet, we can click on any of these cells, and there's a couple of different ways we can do that. We'll just use a random value as an example. You can type this value directly into the cell and then pressing enter. And then you'll notice when you do that, this value appears up here in what's called the formula bar. So it's this space next to the function sign. You can also enter data into a cell by clicking on a cell, going up to the formula bar, and entering your value here. This will enter it into your cell. So these are probably the two most common ways. You can also use a form to enter the data. I will primarily be using the first two methods. These can be used not only for just entering values, but also formulas or functions, which is likely what you are going to use them more for if you already have data in Excel that you are working with. All right. Give me just a second. Trying to find all tasks. All right. So for today's session, we are going to be working with an example data set. This is this commute time 2013-2021 data set. And I will get the link here in the chat, or you can go to that. And this link should take you to an Excel spreadsheet that you can download to your own device. So if you wish to follow along, you can enter that link and download that data set. Since this is an Excel workshop, we're going to use Excel to work with the data, but you can use this example data or similar data sets in many other programs. All right. So for the next couple of slides, we will talk about different ways to make your data more manageable. So if you are, you get your data, you download it into Excel, and now you're wanting to sort of clean it up a little bit, make it a little more manageable for actually working with it. All right, so now we will go back to our Excel. All right, and I will make this just a little bit bigger so that we can see this here. All right, so you'll notice if you are on this particular screen, you see this commute time data. You see this is not a large data set in the grand scheme of things, but a pretty good size. We have a lot of different fields. And as you scroll down, those headers at the top aren't visible. So if you are trying to figure out which particular data points that you want to work with, it can be challenging to have to scroll up, scroll back down within your data. So one thing that you can do to help with that is something called freezing panes. So if you go to the View tab and you, let's say we want to freeze the top here. So for freezing panes, if you go over to the button here, you'll see we can freeze either the top row, the first column, or we can freeze sort of a custom set of rows and columns. What I am going to do is I'm going to highlight this top row. I'm going to go to freeze top row, and we're going to click that. It's hard to sort of see, but this does highlight this top line just a little bit. But if we scroll down, you are now able to see that those headers don't move. So we can now see these headers no matter how far down that we go in our data set. So that is our freeze panes. So now let's say we want to sort our data. Um, so sorting data can help you find particular data points that you want to analyze further. It can help you sort the data into different sections that you might want to analyze. So for sorting data, we can go to our data tab. And you'll see right here in the middle, there is this sort button. So to sort data, you're going to want to select a certain section of your data. If you have it out here and it's blank, it's going to tell you that this can't be applied to the selected range. There's no particular data that it can work with. So we have to highlight some particular section or all of our data. So let's say I want to sort by state. So right now we have all of this data, and it looks like it's kind of sorted going down by year. But let's say we want to sort that by state. So if we highlight this and we go to sort, the first thing it's going to ask is if you want to expand the current selection. And you almost always are going to want to expand the selection. If you don't, it's only going to sort that column and it's not going to sort the corresponding values. So you'll want to make sure it sorts those corresponding values. So if we go to this, we can now select which column that we want to sort by. We are now going to select state. We'll sort on the values. There's a few other options which we'll get to in a little bit. And then for this, I'm going to sort from A to Z. And you'll want to make sure my list has headers box is checked if you have that initial row check that has our variable names. That way it doesn't sort that into the rest of your data. So we have our first sort. We can click OK. And now we see it sorts by the different states going alphabetically. So it has grouped all of those together. So that is one level or sort of one piece of information we're sorting on, but we can sort on different levels. We're not limited to just one. So if we want to sort further, we can go back to our sort button. And so you see it keeps the first level that we had. It's going to keep that state that we had. And then if you want to add levels to this, you would go to this plus button. So you click this plus button, you can add a new level and select that level. So let's say we want average commute time. So what this is going to do now, you could do these at the beginning. So you could do these all at once, but it was first going to sort by state. So whatever is at the top is what it's going to sort by first. And then after it's done that, it will then sort average commute time. So it'll sort average commute time within each of those states. So let's say now we want to go largest to smallest. So we have our two criteria. It's going to sort by state. And then within those, it's going to sort by average commute time. We can click OK. And so now we see this goes from largest to smallest. This one, those years are the same, but you can see in an example down below, such as Alaska, these years are a little bit different because we have added that second sorting criteria. All right. And so the next thing that we can do, we'll go back to our PowerPoint for just a second. So the next type of formatting that we can do is something called conditional formatting. So conditional formatting is used to change the appearance of cells in a particular range based on specified conditions or rules, as they're called. This formatting, such as colors or icons, can be applied to one or more cells. And this allows you to highlight or change the appearance of cells to visually highlight interesting points for data analysis or to help you sort your data. So if we are looking in Excel, so if we're looking in our Excel, if we go to our Home tab, so this is going to be on the Home tab, that very first one. If we go here to the middle, to conditional formatting, we go to highlight cells rules. So this is where you're going to sort the criteria on the conditions for how you format. So I am going to use text because I'm going to sort or develop a rule that's based on our text or our states. So I'm going to say text that contains, and you'll see this new formatting rule box appears. And now I am going to look for specific text that contains a specific word. So what I want to do here is say highlight Florida. So we will look for cells that contain the text Florida. And we can format those with particular colors, fill-ins. We can color the text as well. Let's say I'm not a big fan of any of the automatic options. We can select a particular color that we like. So I'm going to try this sort of peach format. And so what this should do, we have our Florida, we have our format. If we hit OK, and now we have to scroll down a little bit. This did not do that for some reason. So we'll try that again. Ah, all right. So we'll just go with some of the ones that they have on here. All right, well, what this should do is it should highlight this text. And I will just do this the old-fashioned way. What it should do is highlight that text so that you can more easily find this. And the nice thing about conditional formatting is this should be able to find that text anywhere within your data set and highlight that. Here, I just went ahead and highlighted there because for some reason that is not showing up, even though it did earlier. But this will highlight that particular text. And the cool thing that we can do is, and we'll see if this works since we just highlighted it here. If we go back to our sort feature, we add this. We say cell color, and yes, it still works. We can now sort by our cell color. So what I'm going to want to do here is we want to sort so that, say, Florida is at the top. you can move these levels around. So we will kind of move these around and customize these so that we are sorting by state. We want this on top, so this should put our colored cells on top. Then the rest of our states, we'll sort A to Z, and then we'll sort by average commute time. So we see now this put our Florida cells at the top, and kept the other formatting that we had already done. And then the rest of our states are sorted in alphabetical order before that. So this can be a nice way to kind of bring out data that you really want to look at, either bring that to the top or bring that somewhere else within your data set, so that you can analyze that further or even move it to a different sheet or a different spreadsheet to do some analysis. All right, so that was a little bit about formatting our data, sort of cleaning up our data, getting that ready for analysis. So now we're going to talk about formulas and functions. So a formula is an expression that calculates the value of a cell. Formulas operate on values in either one particular cell within our data set or a range of cells. Formulas always begin with an equal sign. You always want to make sure that you start any sort of formula or function with an equal sign. When you enter that equal sign into a cell, you are basically telling Excel to calculate something, right? You're writing an equation of sorts. Our functions are predefined formulas in Excel. These eliminate the manual entry of formulas, which is especially useful for a larger range of values, or if you're wanting to do calculations over, an entire range of data. And they've been given often human-friendly names so that we can figure out what sort of calculation that we are working with. So the formulas, these are some of the more common formulas, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, etc. And then our functions, the general format for a function is the equal sign and then the particular function that you are working with. Some examples of which are shown on the screen, such as sum, average, median, mode, etc. And then within parentheses, you are going to use first cell, colon, last cell. And you can directly write these functions or formulas directly into the cells or the formula bar. Or you can use something called the function wizard to look up different functions that you might want to use within Excel. So if we go back to our Excel, we can sort of see this in action. So if we say want to start with our formulas, so we're going to start simple with our formulas and say we want to add these first two cells. We can type in equals, which we always need to do when we're starting our formulas for functions. And then we can click on this cell, cell E2. And for addition, we add this plus sign, and then we can click on the second cell. So that writes this formula, E2 plus E3. And then once we have our formula completed, we can hit enter. And you'll see when you click on this cell again, the formula appears up in our formula bar. So if we now go in, so now let's say, all right, so let me click out of that. So it's there. So let's say I want to do subtraction. So now I'm going to just type in our particular cell. So there's a few ways you can do this. So you can click on the cells, type in the cells, or you can type this directly into the formula bar. So the multiplication here is this little asterisk. And then you can continue this for all of the different formulas that you are using. If you want to use a function, you can go here to say this adjacent cell. And if we want to use addition, we can use something called the sum function. So we type in sum. So we've used this before, so it's going to appear in this most recently used. But whenever you start typing in a function into Excel, you'll often see a few different options that use that particular function. So there's some if, some ifs, etc., etc. And you can decide if those are applicable for your particular use case. But to do our sum, our function, we're going to have our sum equals. So let's say we're just going to do, let's say we do a selection. So let's say we want to do all of the Florida cells. We can highlight those cells. So this is Excel saying it's going to sum from E2 to E10. We can also type those in manually if we want, either in the cell or our formula bar. Want to close our parentheses, then hit enter. So here we have our sum. And as you can see, even just for this small set, functions are really useful if you have more than just, say, 2 or 3 values, if you're wanting to do some calculations over a large range of cells. So one particular example that I do want to kind of show here is averages. So kind of averaging, finding mean, median is something that you might do fairly often in Excel. So there's a couple different options that we can do to find our average. If we know the data that we want to average over and we can find that easily, we can simply use the average function. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to make a label here at the top to say we're calculating averages. So if we type in our function, we'll see average shows up. So we can click average, and then let's say we want to average over our Florida data. We can highlight our cells. So say E2 to E10. We can then this and hit enter. So nice and simple, we have calculated the average of our Florida cells. But let's say that we want something different, right? Let's say we want the average of Mississippi, for instance. So all the way down here in the middle of the data set. So if we have a pretty good sized data set, that might be a lot of scrolling to figure out where that data is within the data set. So another function that can be really useful in this case is something called the average if function. So this is going to allow us to apply conditions for what we are trying to calculate. So it's going to calculate an average of values subject to certain conditions. And there's several functions that have this sort of if additive to it. So you might have seen sum if before. So there's several functions that allow us to specify conditions. So as you might be able to see when this pops up, there's a little bit more to this one. There's actually 3 criteria that we need. So the first thing that we need is a cell range to search. And so this is often going to be the column or the set of rows that these values might be present in. So first we want to find a particular state. So let's say we want to find our Mississippi. We can either highlight this entire range of cells, or we can click up here at the top, highlight column B. And so this is essentially going to look through all of the cells in column B that have some sort of a value, either a text value or a numerical value. So it will look through all of that. That's why we get this B:B. You can also type in the particular cell range if you know that. So here, just because I have it up, there are 469 rows here. So we could also type, say, B2 to B469. But this is the range that we are going to look through. Now we want our criteria. So this is what we are looking for. So here we are looking for Mississippi. So we're looking for Mississippi, and this is in quotes. So we are looking for this particular segment name. And then the last value is the cells to be averaged. So what this is going to do is it's going to look for within this particular column for any cells that contain Mississippi, and then it's going to average a corresponding cell that is shared with Mississippi. So here we want to average on column E, our average commute time. So if we then close the parentheses, we'll hit enter. And we'll see this averaged. It found our cells with Mississippi, and then it averaged those. And we can check that in this particular instance if we go down to our Mississippi cells. Let's say we just average. Since we're here, we have these cells. I'm going to do that. Close the parentheses, make sure we have the right values. So we have this 24.50458, then 24.50458. So you'll see you find the same values. So using these if functions can be really useful if you are trying to find or do a calculation on a particular subset of your data, but you don't want to necessarily scroll through each time to find that particular part of your data. All right, so just as we pause, I'll just pause here for a second as we move on to the next part to see if folks have any questions about anything we've talked about so far. And we'll also send out a copy of these slides as well so that y'all have this information later and you can go back into Excel and look for this. All right, so now we're going to talk about the data analysis tool pack. So the data analysis tool pack is an add-in for Microsoft Excel that allows us to do data and statistical analysis within the Excel program. It gives us access to a variety of statistical functions without the need to manually enter formulas or functions or set up a multi-step process. So the functions that we were looking at were fairly contained. We only had a couple of criteria that we were entering, but for some statistical calculations, there may not be one inherent function that that Excel has, and you might have to enter multiple functions or set up some sort of multi-step process. The analysis tool pack streamlines that. So while the tool pack is automatically included with each version of Excel, it is not automatically enabled. So you need to manually enable this the first time. And it can also be a bit tricky to find once it is enabled, but we'll go over how to find that in a second. One important note is that the analysis tool pack only works on one worksheet at a time. So at this point, you cannot do analysis across multiple worksheets. We'll see if maybe they change that or have an update to that in future versions of Excel. All right, so loading the analysis toolpack. So this is a little bit different, whether you are on a Windows machine or whether you are on a Mac. I'm on a Mac right now, so I'll demonstrate how to do it on a Mac here in a second. But on the screen here is some instructions for how to do this on a Windows machine. So if you are on a Windows computer, you would first want to navigate to your File tab on the upper left-hand side of the page, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on Options. Once you get to the Excel options pop-up box, which will sort of look like this here, you'll want to select add-ins. And then you will go down to Excel add-ins, click go. And then you should see a pop-up box that has the analysis tool pack as an option, and then hit OK. And so this should add the analysis tool pack or enable that in your Excel. And then this icon should appear under the data tab over at the far right, should say something like data analysis. And the nice thing is once you do this the first time, you don't have to go back and do this again, as long as you're using the same computer. It should be enabled there unless you, for some reason, turn it off at some point. So if you are on a Mac, so I will demonstrate on a Mac. All right, so if you are on a Mac, You can navigate up to tools. So you should see a tools at the top. So if you go to tools and click Excel add-ins, and then when Excel add-ins come up, you should see a list of the add-ins that are available. One of them should be the Analysis Tool Pack. And then you can hit OK. And then if you go to your Data tab, you should see a button that says Data Analysis over towards the far right side of your screen. And so this is how you would access your Analysis Tool Pack once it is enabled. So to actually use the Analysis Tool Pack, click on this, and you should see a pop-up box that comes up. And this will show you all of the different analysis tools that you can use. So there's several that are already built in, including ANOVA, correlation, your different statistical tests, histograms, and descriptive statistics, for example. Due to time, we won't have the opportunity to go over how to do many of these tests, but I will share some resources that should assist you if you need to run one of these other tests. And as I sort of alluded to earlier, it is important to note that while this is an awesome tool and can really help you with your data analysis, there are some limitations to doing data analysis overall with this tool pack in Excel. So each test that you run requires the data to be arranged in a certain way, which means you will often need to do a lot of copying, pasting, rearranging if you're performing multiple tests. Certain tests can only be performed on one column at a time, which makes performing tests on more complex data sets challenging. And then one data management aspect is Excel doesn't log what you are doing. So if you're performing different types of analyses, Excel doesn't keep a log of this. So I do recommend if you are using this to run a series of statistical tests, that you keep another document that sort of logs your process or your method for what you are doing. So for this, I am going to use a descriptive statistics example. So we are going to look at descriptive statistics. So for descriptive statistics, if you haven't used that before or unfamiliar with that, this allows us to get a general idea of the trends in our data set. So we can get some general summary and description of our data. So if we go to our data analysis tool pack, we can select descriptive statistics. We hit OK. And this will come up with a pop-up box that allows us to select a few different things. So I am going to rid of that, rid of that. So you'll see there is an input range. This is the data that we are going to perform analysis on. We can select whether it is grouped into columns or rows. And then we will select our output option. So this is where it's going to output our statistics and our analysis. We can select either a new worksheet, a completely new workbook, or a particular range within the same sheet. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at our Florida column. So if we go to input range and we click the little button on the side, we can go back to our data set. I am going to select our data associated with Florida. If you then hit this little button on the right-hand side again, this will go back to the full box. Now we have that range selected. This is grouped by columns. And since in this instance, there is a label in our first row, we'll want to make sure that button is selected so it doesn't try to analyze that when it does its calculations. I am going to put this in a new worksheet. And for this, we're just going to name this Florida Stats. And then we want some summary statistics here. So we're going to select summary statistics. And so that is all that we are looking for this particular calculation. And so we can then hit OK. And you can see I will make this a little bigger. You can see we have now calculated some statistics on our average commute time for Florida. And so these are the different statistical values that Excel currently calculates. So it kind of largely here is calculating central tendencies by finding the mean, the median, and here there is no mode. There is no most frequently occurring numbers. That's what our mode is. Everything only occurs once. And then it also calculates things such as our standard deviation, our min, our max, and then sort of the different distribution of our data. So this is the descriptive statistics that Excel can calculate. We can also try one more particular set of values. Say we want to look at Georgia as well, and we want to compare those statistics from Florida to Georgia. We can go back to our data analysis toolpack, select descriptive statistics. And now I am going to select a new range of data. So we're going to go down to Georgia. We are going to select the commute time data that we want to associate with that. And I clicked out of it. So we selected this. We're going to output this in a new worksheet. And here, since this is further down, I don't have any labels, so I'll want to make sure I uncheck that box. And then we hit OK. Make this a little bigger. I will sort of make this column a little bigger so we can read it. And then this, I will need to actually enter. This is. So this is our average commute time, and then you can see the summary statistics for our Georgia data. And so then you could compare these and sort of compare, say, the mean, the median of these two particular sets of data. And you could do this across different parts of your data set. So again, if you're looking to do some quick data analysis, statistical analysis in Excel, the data analysis tool pack is a really great feature. And each of these is going to look a little bit different. So just to show you kind of that. We won't go into doing a calculation, but say you want to do some ANOVA. You see if we go to that, this is going to look a little bit different. And that's going to depend on the particular calculation that you are doing. But that's a little bit about how to use the analysis toolpack. And as we move on to the last portion, I will pause here to see if folks have any questions. All right, so up to this point, we've discussed some of the ways that we can analyze, perform statistical analysis, and sort of work with, clean up our data in Excel. We're going to finish today's workshop by discussing some of the options within Excel for visualizing and representing your data using charts and graphs. So to do this, there is a chart ribbon in Excel under the Insert tab. And this contains a variety of different charts that you can select based upon the type of visualization that you are looking for, your particular data set, the story that you're trying to tell. You can choose from recommended charts or all of the different charts. Excel will sometimes give you good recommended charts. Sometimes some of them aren't really applicable to your data. So you do have to look into them a little bit. To sort of show that in action, we are going to plot sort of a specific subset of the commute time data. So if I go back to Excel, so if we go back to our Excel, you'll see I've selected a new sheet here. So this particular sheet, got a little bigger now. This particular sheet is sort of a summary of this larger data set that we have. This just makes the graphing portion a little bit quicker. So if I say want to plot all of this, so our average commute time for 4 of our states, I first need to select a portion of the data. So I'm going to select all of this data. If I go to our Insert tab, you can see here in the middle, there's a kind of mini chart ribbon. So a ribbon within kind of this larger ribbon. So let's say I'm not 100% sure which particular chart that I want to use. I can go to recommended charts, and Excel will then output some different options that it thinks might be applicable for my data selection. As you can see, some of these aren't necessarily what we're probably looking for. But this line graph or this scatter plot could be particularly interesting if, say, we're looking at how this data changes over time. So I'm going to go with a scatter plot. So if I select this, it will quickly output this scatter plot. So this is all well and good. But let's say we want to sort of clean this up a bit, right? So first thing we can do is move the chart. You can keep this within the same sheet if you like. I just like moving it to a separate sheet to be able to kind of visualize it and be able to see all the different components a little bit easier. So I'm going to move this to a new sheet. And I'm going to just call this example chart. So we will move this to a new worksheet. And you should see at the top, if you have created your plot, there'll be a couple of new selections on our ribbon. There'll be this chart design and there'll be this format tab. So first, as you can see, we have a lot of white space. So let's say we want to manipulate our axes, kind of remove as much of that white space as we can. So if we go first to our horizontal axis, if we double click on that particular axis, you'll see we get this pop-up on the right with different axis options and text options that we can use to edit this. So I'm going to eliminate the extra year that was added here on each side. So we get rid of that. And then let's say we want to edit our y-axis to get rid of all of this white space. So we'll first start with 20, rid of that. And then let's say go up to 29. And then I'm going to get rid of a little bit more here so we can visualize this easier. Let's say 23. So now this looks a lot better already. As you can see, we already have our legend created here. So this is already kind of associated the different colors with the particular states, which is really nice. Then we can add titles and any other information. So the chart title is already here by default. So we can say average commute time. And then if we want to add anything else, so if we want to add, say, a label for our y-axis and our x-axis, if you go to this add chart element, you'll see you can add you can add axes themselves. You can add axis titles. The chart title is already there. And then you could add different data labels or error bars or additional grid lines if you would like. You can change where the legend is placed within your graph if you want it in a different spot. But here we're going to select axis titles. We're going to select one horizontally. So this is our year. And then vertical. This is our time. We'll add our minutes. And so you can add different elements here, and then you can kind of format the axes here. So that's a quick overview of how you would plot some data in Excel. As you saw before, there are many different chart options. And if you select within sort of each of these little things here, you can see that there are many different options, even within one particular criteria, such as columns or line plots, bar charts, pie charts, etc. So many different options. Choose the one that works best for the data that you are working with. All right, so some different sources here. So I will come back on here. It's the end because we are mostly done with the demonstration part. So sort of at the end, I like to provide some resources for folks who want to dive a little bit deeper after the workshop into any of this material. We provided sort of an overview today of the different data analysis capabilities, sort of data management cleaning capabilities and plotting abilities of Excel. But there's a lot more that Excel can do that we aren't able to cover in like an hour and 15-minute workshop. So these are some resources for you to do some further learning. Microsoft provides some really good videos and tutorials. There's a list of different functions within Excel that you can take a look at. There is a document here on working with the analysis tool pack. If you want to dive into that a little bit further. And then there are some online communities and forums such as Stack Overflow that you can use. If you're using Excel and maybe you're running into an issue or you're trying to do something you can't figure it out, there's probably somebody else that has tried that as well. And then, of course, your friendly librarians. So those of us here at FSU Libraries, we're more than happy to help you if you're trying to use Excel or any of the many other data analysis and visualization softwares for your particular project or applications. So with that, I want to close out by thanking everyone for coming. We do have a short survey for the end of the workshop. Please give us your thoughts on today's workshop so we know what to cover, what to improve for next time, or what you liked about today. You can scan the QR code. There is a link as well. Let me know if you need me to paste that link. Yeah, and then this is, and I'll go back to the other slide in just a second. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, would like to reach out after the workshop. And so with that, thank you all very much. I'll stick around for a few minutes if folks have questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day and hope to see you at one of our future workshops.